welcome Frank to the Story Attic. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. As I was mentioning, I'm here at my parents' house on Long Island using my childhood bedroom where everyone records their podcasts.
Well, of course.
There's alerts coming through. And for those of you listening, this is my first time using Zoom to record an interview. So hopefully Frank and I will get through this without too much struggle and strife, technology struggle. So thanks, Frank, for joining me today and for offering to share your amazing story with me.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes. So a little background. Do you want to give a little background about yourself and maybe tell people how we know each other?
Sure. Actually, well, we know each other because we worked together, I believe, like 25 years ago, I think.
Shh, Frank.
Yeah, I know. Oy, oy, oy. But yeah, I am a Long Islander. I am a musician. I have a long history of playing music around here and tying it into doing medical charity work for a charity that pertains to a condition I was born with.
I see. And so, well, yeah, it's interesting because we have known each other since, I'm going to go stretch it back to 1993.
Sounds right.
Yes, that was actually 28 years ago. And Frank was the nicest human that we worked with for sure.
Oh, thank you.
There were some nice people there, but you were definitely the nicest. And
thank you too.
And we're playing music back then. You were playing lots and lots of Beatles. I think it's quite possible you are the biggest Beatles fan that's ever lived. Is that possible?
Yeah. That makes sense.
How many times have you met Paul McCartney?
0.
Really? I thought I saw a picture of you with Paul McCartney.
No, I met Ringo once, but not Paul. Still trying for that one.
Gotcha. And I'm assuming you haven't met John.
No, that was way before my. Well, I was 13.
You were 13, yeah.
When he passed away, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about. You said you alluded to the fact that you had a condition, and it's something that, interestingly, knowing you, we hadn't seen each other in a very long time before a few years ago,
right?
And had reacquainted on through Facebook, and that is, I believe, the way that I found out that you had a condition.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I remember. I mean, my memory is not that good. I'm not sure that I remember hearing or you telling me previously about your condition. So maybe let's rewind and tell me a little bit about, I mean, is this condition and were you born with it?
Sure, yes. It's a condition called, well, the official name is Barrett syndrome, which is named after the doctors who discovered it, but it's known more commonly as Prune belly syndrome. And basically, it stems from the fact that you're born without abdominal muscles most of the time. Some people have some, but most people have no muscles at birth, which causes complications to your heart, your lungs, and your kidneys mostly.
And were you one of those people that was born without any abdominal muscles?
Completely without, right. Exactly.
Okay. So maybe rewind even a little bit further. What do you know about your mom's pregnancy? And
honestly, I believe it was a total surprise to her when this happened. There was she has diabetes, which I also do have. But there was no other knowledge of anything else that would have caused this to happen.
Were you born with diabetes?
No. I've known about that for about 9 years.
I was going to say, maybe that's an ignorant question because I don't know. Are people born with diabetes? Which type of diabetes?
I'm type 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So your mom gave birth to you without having any previous knowledge, I guess through ultrasound?
Honest, I honestly don't know. I believe I was just born and they discovered it. I don't know if they discovered it in a moment or within a few days.
So, yeah, because I'm thinking about my own ultrasounds. I don't think you see muscles in the ultrasound. I think you see bones, right? You can actually see the vertebra in
Right.
ultrasound. And now this is new technology. I mean,
yeah, I mean, families now know before
they
the
do.
baby's born. Yes, absolutely.
All right, well, let's get to that. So let's get to that later. But okay,
Sure.
So tell me, so you were born and then what happened?
Basically, I spent, I believe, most of my first year in the hospital, or at least in and out of hospitals. I know my first Christmas was spent in the hospital. They didn't really know what to do with it, with the situation, how to treat it. And they honestly were telling my mother, that I wasn't expected to survive the first year.
How did they discover that you had no abdominal muscles? Palpation? I mean, do you have any idea how they discover that?
I honestly don't know. I just know that they were able to determine that. And, my doctors, my pediatricians got involved, and they knew a bit about it, but overall, the medical community didn't know about it a lot of it.
And you were born at which hospital?
It was called at the time Central General Hospital in Plainview. It's now Plainview Hospital.
Okay, so what kinds of things did they do to help you in your first? Well, you were in the hospital for a long time. What kinds of things were they doing for you?
Yeah, I just know that there were a lot of surgeries involved. I believe at least the first 10 years worth. There were many, many surgeries, mostly pertaining to the kidney area. I know I had pneumonia 4 times in the first 4 years, and 1 time was nearly fatal. Because again, without the protection of the muscles, it affects every other organ in you. So the lungs were very affected, and mostly the lungs and the kidneys were what were affected the most. And
so you were in and out of the hospital with kidney and lung infections and
yes,
pneumonia.
Right.
I can't imagine what kind of. I mean, I'm sure that was super hard on you as an infant. Mm-hmm. Did you ever talk to your mom later to find out how was she coping? How were you in the hospital all of that time?
Well, I mean, she was 22 when I was born. So she was young. She, because at the time, this was 1967, they didn't know a lot about it. So there wasn't a lot to tell her at that point. And, I believe my doctor was trying to keep things positive and say, we're going to figure it out. Don't worry about it. We're going to make it work. But a lot of people were telling her he's not expected to live within the first year. And we're trying to figure out what to do.
Did she have other children?
I have one brother who is 3 years younger than me.
Okay, so he came later.
Yes.
And your father?
He was around the time he left when I was 2. They got divorced when I was 2, and wasn't really involved after that.
Okay.
So I know he would inform the family when they knew any information when Mom was still in the hospital. But after that, I don't believe he was involved at all. Okay,
so your mom was kind of coping on her own.
Yeah, we moved back in with my grandmother actually, and she helped her out from then on.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, being a single parent is hard already. I can only imagine that having to be in and out of the hospital regularly with you must have been tough.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So okay. So tell me then. They didn't expect you to live past the first year.
Right.
what was happening then in that period after the 1 year birthday, your first birthday passed? How did things progress?
Um, well, I mean, like I said, there were several surgeries along the way. I don't really know the timeline from the early years that well. But I mean, it wasn't just the first year, but that's what their expectations were. That the first year I was not when I was not survived. Actually, a general statistic for prune belly is that it's 50% only survive past 2 years old.
Wow, 50%.
So 50%, and then after that, it's varying degrees of difficulties. But my doctors just pinpoint, they figured it would be within 1 year, not even two. But just through whatever luck, I guess you can call it, I was able to get past that point.
Right. So, okay. So then year, 2 years, 3 years, you're having regular infections. I mean, was your mom and were you progressing developmentally in other ways in an even trajectory with your age?
Yeah. I mean, things like walking took longer. I believe I was about 2.5 when I started walking, only because there's no protection in the muscle area. My belly was extended like twice the size of what a normal belly would look like. So balance and things like that were tougher to do. I never actually crawled as a baby. I believe that they told me I sat and just pushed myself along on the floor.
You scooted.
Yeah, basically, it was never. I couldn't crawl because of the stomach, and I think talking was the normal progression, but definitely walking was longer. But
okay, so at what point then did they? Because it sounded like they weren't. The surgeries that you were having, were they surgeries that were planned because of extraneous conditions or because of prune belly syndrome?
I believe I would probably have to guess mostly or all related to prune belly, because they were things. There were it was things like moving, mostly kidney related issues, like things like testicles that be brought down. They were hiked way up in the chest area, and they had to be brought down.
Wow.
Yeah, things like that.
How did they do that? Do you know how they did that?
I don't know. I know that
I'm just glad they did it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
right.
It is a pretty common thing for prune belly patients, and they don't consider it they consider it a pretty normal way of doing things.
So it sounds like the conditions that were being treated and or that you were receiving surgeries for were secondary infections that were coming as a result of having prune belly because there were no corrective surgeries for prune belly. Is that correct?
Absolutely correct. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll come back to that because I know there's a lot more on on that part. But then, in hindsight, like, what do you recall about your childhood and what types of normalcy and or difficulties you had with this?
Okay. Well, basically, I can just remember with the more socially than anything else. In school, I was always protected. My mother made a point of making sure that I was always protected, that I didn't get hurt, that I wasn't actually able to play any kind of sports. So like when kids were having phys ed, I would be sitting against the wall watching them play. And so, I mean, I, of course, as a kid, couldn't understand why I had to be that way. And I was jealous of them being able to do that. And they were looking at me like, why is he getting special treatment? Why is he not playing with us? That kind of thing.
Was there any education on the part of the school to inform the kids in your class about what was happening for you?
I mean, I think they knew that there was something different going on. I don't know how much they knew. I don't know if my mother actually had. I don't remember the class being told anything medically. Just that I was sick and you got to watch out and not hurt him. That kind of thing.
It's so hard to be a kid anyway. Right?
Yeah.
It's so hard to be a kid and feel like you're being different. And
Absolutely.
I can only imagine that's, so stressful on you as a little boy.
Yeah, I mean, luckily most of the kids understood, and I had a lot of friends who were very supportive. But there were some that weren't, and some that took advantage of it and were the bullies. But we dealt with them as time went on, and were able to get past that.
When you said that your mom protected you, I wish I had the formula for protecting children, right? Because emotionally, it's really hard to protect them. You were referring to like keeping you out of super physical activities to make sure that you weren't going to be injured during sports, right. Okay. So, and obviously so that the school was notified, but clearly there's nothing anyone can do to combat kids who are just shitty. Right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Like I said, I had to wear a Velcro binder around the midsection, which was it was a tight Velcro binder which served as a protection in some way.
I wore one of those after my C-section.
Did you?
I did. They give you that. I wonder.
Wow.
I wonder if that's has anything to do after a C-section, so that because your abdominal muscles can tear during any birth, but after a C-section in particular, they open you up and then they put you back together.
Mm-hmm.
And I wore a binder. I was very bad at it. So, but you're supposed to wear a binder for a period of time to re-engage those muscles.
Right.
So that's an interesting. I wonder if that's any root in that.
It's possible.
The thought process is to strengthen the muscles and to also make sure you're standing upright.
Yeah. Right. I honestly don't know. Another thing about physically is, I mean, I can show you visually, but I'm trying to be able to describe it better. Where before, in those earlier years with no muscles, I couldn't just lift myself up off a chair and stand up. I had to lean on something. I had to lean on a table or whatever was near me and push myself up. I couldn't get up on my own like that. I couldn't do sit-ups because again, there's no muscles there. So there's nothing to help you along to do that. So that was one of the other reasons why I was so protected, because any slight thing that hit me or touched me, I would be severely hurt.
Now, I know I asked you this question in our private conversation.
Mm-hmm.
What do your organs do when you don't have muscles protecting them?
Well, again, that's mostly kidneys. That's in my case, it's mostly the kidney function that was the problem. Again, I'll get a little TMI with this, but my bladder is 10 times the size it should be.
Wow.
Yeah. So I can hold basically like 2.5 liters.
So does that make you more prone to infection?
Yes.
Or do
absolutely.
you just have to more frequently relieve yourself? And is that, did you have to just more frequently make sure that you were relieving yourself so that you didn't possibly get an infection from having gone too long?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I did have a lot of infections from that. Even though I try to be careful about doing it regularly as much as possible. But again,
you don't have the urge.
Right. Exactly. Whereas people would normally feel it when they had to, I could go for hours.
Wow.
So, and again, that's part of the kidney end of it, because no muscles, the urge to go, if it's not there, it's retained longer.
Right.
So
cause
problems.
When can you? I didn't ask you this before, but muscles wise, I am familiar with, I used to be a massage therapist, so I'm familiar with some of the muscles in the abdomen that I can remember. So didn't have a diaphragm, didn't
No.
have rectus abdominis. And did you have, when you said none, like, so what is the first muscle, like down from your pelvic region? Did you have like your all of your hip muscles and those attachments to your quadriceps? Because that's kind of your abdominal area also.
Yeah, no, none.
Okay, wow.
Absolutely none. Yeah.
So thank you for clarifying that.
No, sure, absolutely.
Okay, so you were bullied by shitty kids in school, and do you remember? Like, I mean, I don't want to bring you back through something that was difficult.
That's okay.
Any thoughts or specific memories about that and how you handled yourself?
Well, I mean, there was one person in particular that was the main one, and he was, quote unquote, my best friend for most of my elementary school years. But looking back on it now, it was the kind of thing where that person would, basically take advantage of the fact that I couldn't fight back, and he would, make me do things or say things and threaten to hurt me if I didn't do them and that kind of thing. And he would try to physically hurt me once in a while without disguising it as something else,
like an accident.
Or there was one instance I remember that that he and another person had me, like, we were playing in someone's house, someone's backyard, and they said, okay, stand right where you are. We're gonna go. We have this wooded area back here. We're gonna go look around and see what's going on. I'm like, okay, and they went away, and all of a sudden I'm standing there, and all of a sudden I feel rocks coming at me from behind, and I hear them like snickering, trying not to make, thinking I can't hear them laughing. So they come out and they said, oh, is anything going on? Anything happening? I just went, no, everything's quiet. Everything's fine here. And they're like, okay, well, stand here again. Wait, something. We're just gonna go look at something. Okay, they do it again. I wasn't gonna give them the satisfaction that I knew they were trying this, and I saw it coming and stayed out of the way of it, obviously. But they wanted me to be like, no, my God, you're hurting me. I'm gonna tell my mother and all this kind of stuff, and they, took pleasure in that. I wasn't gonna let them do that.
That's sadistic.
Yeah, things like that,
How old were you then? Do you remember?
This is elementary school age. I'm thinking like 8 or 9, somewhere in there.
Oh, and so it was a boy who was supposed to be your best friend, or pretending to be your best friend.
Absolutely.
Wow, Frank, I'm sorry. That's
all right. And as the years, this went through for a few years of that, and I finally just, I finally one time said no to him, and he said, "Well, I'm gonna beat you up if you don't do it." I'm like, "No, you're not. No, you're not." Well, then I'm just gonna leave. I'm like, "Well, then you do what you have to do. I'm sorry, but no, I've had enough of this." And that was that. So,
well, this is a sidebar question, maybe, but did you ever address that kid? I mean, as you got older, I would imagine you probably continue to see him. Did you ever talk to him?
We stayed out of each other's way at that point. It wasn't worth it. It wouldn't have sunk into him. And I believe he did it to other people too in various ways. Mm-hmm. So I don't think it would have sunk in to even try to talk to him about it. So I just left it alone. He had his life, I had mine, and we just left it alone. Stayed away from each other.
Yeah, right. You just went in different directions.
Yeah.
You see, I told you were like the nicest person, because that's a very graceful thing to do for a teenager. Well, at the time you were in elementary school, I know, but as you got older, to not, confront him. Okay. And is there anything else that you had wanted to share about bullying and what a crappy situation that you were put in?
The only other thing that that's really worth bringing up anyway, is that in junior high school, I was walking with a friend of mine from one class to another. And, back then, the hallways were always very crowded with kids coming at every direction to get to their next class. So I'm walking with one of my friends, and I'm looking to my right, talking to him as we're headed forward. And all of a sudden, I just feel a blow to my stomach. I had a bunch of books with me that I was always held in front of my stomach to try to, little extra protection as I'm walking. But someone hit me. They got past my books and hit me in the stomach. I went down, couldn't breathe. And I went home from school, went to see my doctor. And this is all I had, no muscles. So where I'm hit is the worst spot to be hit. Then the doctor said to me that, Frank, it was a little bit left of midsection where they hit you. If it was centered, it would have killed you. A couple of inches. By a couple of inches would have killed me.
Wow.
So, yeah.
You really got away. I mean, that's good fortune by a couple of inches. It's kind of like the lightning strike, just a couple inches away from you. That's remarkable.
And again, I felt that, I had to, I felt sometimes I was being too careful. I'm like, oh, come on. Does it have to be this severe, this detailed, that how careful I have to be? And then something like that happens. And yes, the answer is yes, you have to be that careful.
Yeah, I would imagine I would have walked through life with something in front of me, feeling like I had to protect my midsection, my core, because you just know you're vulnerable. I did that, like I said, when you're pregnant, you do it. Not that you've ever been pregnant, not that I'm aware of, but when you're pregnant, you do it because you have a baby there and you're trying to protect yourself and your baby. And if you fall or bang into something, the natural instinct is to cover the area and protect yourself. And so I can imagine that you probably, and it sounds like you're confirming that you frequently at least felt the need to have a barrier between you and the rest of the world because God forbid something, hit into you, that you were more vulnerable. Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing. I think that one time that I was hit, I was probably visibly a target because I'm holding my books and probably looking around like, okay, there's nobody get near me, a little paranoid. And I was probably a visible target to somebody. Mm-hmm. And I never found out who it was either because I was looking away and went down and whoever did it just kept on walking.
Well, maybe they'll hear this and reach out to you and apologize for being an a-hole. Right. I mean, people.
It's fun.
Okay. So you were, at this point, it sounded like you were in about middle school when that happened? Okay.
Junior high school, yes.
And was there, during this time as you were growing up, was there any promise by anyone that they were going to find an alternate way for you to live without having to carry books in front of you every day?
Yes. Well, when I was 13, going to one of my routine doctor appointments, my doctor said to my mother and I that she knows of a surgeon who has been able to do surgery where they are moving muscle from one place to another, mostly as to victims of like ulcers or accidents, things like that. But my doctor talked to the surgeon and told her about me having Prune syndrome. He knew of the condition enough to know that, what it was. And he says, I can probably do the same for him, where I can move the muscle around and replace the missing muscles in the abdominal area. So we met with him.
He said probably.
Well, probably because, he had done it for other reasons again, but not for Prune belly. So I would be the first one for the purposes of Prune belly.
The first one that he ever did this on?
That he or anybody that we know of would ever do.
First one in the country, possibly. Yes. Possibly the world?
Possibly the world, yeah.
Wow.
So we met with him and talked about it. And he says, I have not done this for the purpose of Prune belly, but I know what Prune belly is and what it does. And I believe that I can fix this for you. It would be, he said, I remember him saying it would be a 95% correction. So his thoughts was that he would, take one quadricep muscle from each thigh and basically flip them up into the abdominal area. And the three remaining quadriceps in the thighs would expand so that there'd be no loss of muscle in that area, in the legs.
And for my, I had asked you this previously, but for the edification of the listener, there is no way to get muscle tissue from a deceased person, or right?
No, my surgeon came to a family convention years later, and someone asked him about that because we had one family who a mother donated kidneys to her son to help him with the kidney issues. And she says, "Can I also donate muscle?" And he says, "Unfortunately, no. It has to come from within the person's body."
Good, very good.
So, yeah, absolutely. Sure.
So how long was it from the time that he said he could probably do this until he actually did do it?
It was about 2 years. I was 15 when I finally had the operation done. I had to work on the muscle. I had to build the muscles up in between that, mostly by riding bikes or walking, just to get the muscles built up properly enough to be considered workable to transfer them.
Okay, so you were you're working out your quadriceps to make them stronger, more taut, maybe. Okay,
exactly. And he was very pleased with mostly it was bike riding that I did, and he was very pleased. He said actually they're actually better than he wanted them to be. So he was very eager to get this done because he knew that it was going to work well with how much I had worked on it.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, when I was 15 in August of '82. I went in and he did the operation. And I mean, the funniest part of it was, I remember it was 1982. So I remember being wheeled in to the operating room and seeing a camera of what we now consider a video camera, like a camcorder. But in 1982, they weren't all that common yet. So I remember being wheeled in and saying, "Why is there a TV camera in the operating room?" And they said, "Don't worry about it. Don't worry. We're going to film. We're filming this." I'm like, okay. So, and I'll talk about that later. I actually got a copy of that, which I'll talk about later.
Ooh, but, I don't know that sounds gory.
It is a bit, yeah. It's not a sit down with a popcorn movie kind of thing, but
unless you're, yeah. I mean, somebody might enjoy that. I don't know
exactly. But so they basically did the operation. I was in the hospital for about 2 weeks over at what's now known as Winthrop Hospital in Mineola. I believe it was called New York Hospital back then. And it took a 2 week recovery in the hospital, and then about a month, I believe, recovery at home. And it was before school started again for the next coming year, so I was able to recover a bit before having to go back to school. So, and it worked out. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, that's, I mean, an incredible surgery and no complications in the operating room.
No complications. I believe it was about 6-hour surgery. No complications. The recovery went pretty well. I always had to get used to the fact that I had something there that wasn't there before. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I could tell.
Can you describe that sensation?
Well, I mean, basically, before the surgery was just emptiness. Again, because there's nothing there to protect the insides, so just a lot of emptiness. And then now I felt a big difference. I felt that there was something there finally. There was no more need for binders.
So when you pressed upon your ab, you felt resistance.
Yes,
versus like palpating and pushing into your abdominal cavity.
Right, exactly right.
Skin covering. Okay, wow. I realize I say wow a lot.
No, that's okay.
But I'm often wowed.
Yeah. So I mean, and all the functions I talked about before, where I couldn't get up on my own, now I'm able to do all that. At this point, I'm able to get up on my own without any use of leaning on anything.
Can I ask you this? Did they construct earlier I referenced a couple of different abdominal muscles. Did they construct those specific muscles, or was it? I'm just curious as to what it looks like on the inside, because I kind of know what.
Well, I mean, it's basically the quadricep muscles, but I believe the size of them were the same or somewhat equal to what the abdominal muscles would be. So it basically, just because the size was similar, that was the protection. They flipped them up and attached them. I'm not sure to what. I don't know if it was the chest cavity or how they attached them to, but the size
Probably your
is
sternum. I would guess probably your sternum.
Probably.
So, well, can I ask a secondary question then about your quadriceps?
Mm-hmm.
There's 4 of them.
Mm-hmm.
So what did they take one and then you only have 3? I don't know.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. They took 1 from each leg.
Okay.
There's 4 in that area. Like I said, the other, and that's one question I had when he first told me about it. If you're taking 1 muscle from each leg, and what do the other 3 do? Will I have any loss of function in the legs? He said no. He says the 3 muscles would now contract and make up the difference. And again,
has it ever caused you any type of, did you ever notice the difference?
No, honestly, because he actually said when you get back home, I want you to do more bike riding. Build up those muscles again to help them contract and help them make the difference up.
That is truly incredible.
Yeah, and that's basically what happened. So
amazing. So you obviously would have noticed a difference in your abdominal area,
right?
Hence the way the way I described it, and then right. You really didn't notice a difference in your quadriceps. And right. Okay, so post surgery, were they monitoring you? I mean, it's not like getting a kidney donation, right? It's not like you're going to reject the abdominal muscles, presumably.
Right. Yeah, there was no rejection. Everything went 100%. It was that was expected by the surgeon. He was very, very happy with how it went. I also had scoliosis as a kid because of all this, and it didn't fix scoliosis, but it more or less froze it, where it wasn't going to get worse. If I backtrack a little bit, for most of 8th grade in junior high school, I had to wear a back brace for most of the year, which basically consisted of a plastic piece in the chest area, plastic pieces in the hip area, and then a big metal beam in front, almost like a handle is what it looked like, and a headrest where I had to kind of look up most of the time toward the ceiling.
Okay, so the scoliosis was somewhat corrected because you now had abdominal muscles.
Right. So, the first few doctor visits with the surgeon, he would look over everything, take pictures. He took pictures before the surgery, he took pictures right after the surgery, x-rays, constantly. And, excuse me. He just, the turnout, the outcome was just everything he expected it to be, luckily.
Amazing.
So, we would actually again meet years later to do a follow-up on that. If you want to hold off on that.
No, well, okay, I'm interested in hearing. Let's talk about how this changed your life. I can only imagine, but let's talk about how it changed your life.
Sure. Yeah, again, mostly in terms of function. I'm getting around better now. I'm not as limited. But because, it was close, it was, I believe, 10th grade. When I went back to school, it was 10th grade. So I still had a couple more years of school to go, but they were able to keep me out of phys ed again, because new muscles that, I started to work on building them up, do sit-ups, keep them in shape. So they kept me out of phys ed, for the rest of my school career. So I didn't have to worry about that. So, my interests went to music instead. Music is one thing I could do.
Because you weren't going to be a football player.
Right, exactly. So, from a young childhood, I've always loved music and slowly started to develop as a musician anyway. But at this point, it was easier to do because I was able to sing better. I was able to project and use my lungs better and play instruments.
That's
so that,
cool.
from then on, it's really when my interest in music really developed.
Did you play in the band or the orchestra?
I played violin in elementary school for about 3 or 4 years. I can't remember a note of it now. Eventually went to singing after that. I went to chorus in elementary school. Junior high school, I was in a piano class, but I had an ear for music where I was able to pick up how to play certain things just by hearing it. Mm-hmm. And the piano teachers caught on to that because I wasn't reading the sheet music in front of me. I was basically doing it by ear. They said, "You don't belong in piano. You belong in something like chorus. So we're going to transfer you next semester to the chorus class, where you can use what you know to your advantage." So from that point on, I was in chorus, and great thing about that is that I was able to use my knowledge pretty well there. They allowed me to arrange a couple of songs of mine for the chorus to sing and things like that. So it really helped my development musically very well.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about how did it we obviously the physical aspect is a stark contrast to where you had been, but what about emotionally or mentally? How did it impact your psyche?
Oh, it was a total turnaround from all that.
What had you felt like before, and then what did you feel like after?
Well, before, because of my physical limitations, especially, there was a lot of, limitations, basically, is what it comes down to, and insecurity from the limitations. Again, because beforehand, I always had to be looked after and had to be protected and had to be careful. Whereas after the surgery, that, for the most part, went away. And, it helped me feel better about things. Again, because I was able to
your self-esteem improve. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And again, and because of that, I was able to focus more on music and friendships and not having to feel always insecure and always, cautious around people. That all went away. And I was able to develop friendships and, live somewhat normally after that.
Yeah. Okay. So then tell me a little bit about your life since, many people graduate from high school and then go on to work in careers and stuff. But I think what I'm most interested to know is what types of things do you do for awareness? Because it sounds like you were one that received a surgery. And then what happened after that? Do they do this routinely now? Is it?
Yeah, I'm make sure I start the right spot here. They, as far as we knew, for about 20 years or so, no one else had done the surgery that I had done. There were no other patients with it. There were no other doctors who were offering it that we knew of. And as time went on, I found a website that pertains to this condition, where the community of families get to know each other and obtain information from doctors where they wouldn't have them where they are, and families would exchange stories. So we would also have conventions once a year in different spots in the country to meet in person and talk with their local doctors what they knew about everything related to prune belly.
Can I ask, I'm sorry, what is the diagnosis rate of prune belly syndrome? Like 1 in how many children are born with this condition?
The website has always listed that it was 1 in 40,000 live births. And of that, 50% do not live past 2 years old. We have a research team in Dallas, Texas for the last 10 years. And based on their surveys and studies, they actually have figured out that it's more like 1,500 living cases, right? Currently in the United States, and probably not much more worldwide.
Why do you think that is? Because so you think people live longer in the United States? So there are 1,500 people currently living with the condition in the United States. Do you think it's because they don't live longer as long in other countries?
I'm not sure if that's the reason, or we just don't know the real numbers. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's basically our numbers. The numbers they have are based on who is part of the website community and who have submitted themselves for testing and that kind of thing.
Right, and in a third world country, they're probably not Googling,
right,
and or participating in a database.
Right,
makes sense.
Actually, we probably about 5 or 6 years ago, there was a family from India who came to the United States for one of the conventions, and he had said, he was 35 at the time. He says, as far as he knows, he's the only person in India with prune belly, and the doctors there had no clue what to do about it, what to do for him. He says he went on the internet, found this website, and he says, and he didn't know, who else was sitting in the room with him. He said, I looked up some information on the website and found Frank Walker's information, and read his story. And I said, I have to find out more about this. I said, excuse me, I'm right here. And he said, what? So we had a big hug and the whole thing. And,
my God.
Yeah, he was very happy to learn that. So, but going back to the surgery part of it, we didn't know for a long time that anyone else had done this.
For 20 years.
For 20 years. I even talked to my surgeon about it. He says, yeah, I've been having a hard time selling this to hospitals, to medical communities, medical circles. I said before that he had taken pictures before the surgery and just after. And then 17 years later, he called me and says, I want to do a follow-up to see how you're doing. I said, okay. So we do a follow-up. He did more x-rays, more tests. He had me do like some sit-ups, or had me, he says, okay, I want to try a couple things out. He says, first of all, lay flat. Okay. He says, give me like a half a sit-up. I said, okay. And I did it. He gasped. I'm like, whoa, what's the matter? He says, you don't remember? He said, you couldn't lift your head up before the surgery. He says, okay, now sit on the gym bench over here and just dangle your legs. Okay. He says, now lift your legs up and straighten them. Okay. He says, again, you couldn't lift your legs before, let alone straighten them before the surgery.
Wow.
That's what these surgeries have done. So he took all that information and wrote an article for a medical journal.
How long after the surgery was that?
This was 17 years later. It's 1998.
Thank you. I forgot. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, 1998. He had me meet with him. So 1999, he published the article, and it's been circulating medical circles ever since. Excuse me. So, but he had a hard time selling it because people, whether it was out of jealousy that he was the one that came up with this idea and no one else would. He says, and sometimes it was a political thing like that. Sometimes it was just, there's not enough, it's one person, it's one case. So there's not enough data to back it up. So he had a lot of frustration from that.
So let's do nothing instead.
Right. So, and this is the thing. Now, one of the conventions we went to, this was in 2006. I remember it vividly. We were in Chicago, and the urologist was speaking to the community about options he knew of to help people with the missing muscles. And the main option they always talk about is a abdominoplasty, which is basically tightening the muscle area. Taking the excess skin because of no protection and just basically folding it over like a book.
You mean kind of like you would like having a facelift?
Yeah, basically. It's a stomach lift.
Okay.
It tightens the area, so it helps you a little bit with protection, but it doesn't correct the problem.
I would also imagine that might feel uncomfortable. Maybe I don't.
Yeah, well, again, and yeah, to that, some of these types of surgeries don't last. They'll open themselves up.
Right.
So, at the time, that was their only option, was to tighten up the area, but not fixing the fact that you're still missing the muscles. So he's discussing this with all of us in the convention. And he says, I am aware actually, but that there is one article that came out of New York about a young guy who had muscle transplant surgery, where they took muscles from his legs and moved them up to the stomach. He says and this is 2006, and the article came out in 1999. Okay. So it's been around 15, 16 years at this point. He says it's a very, very famous article in medical circles. It's a miracle that this worked and that it's doing so well. He says, but it's one case. So we normally consider maybe 5 or 6 cases of the same thing in order to even consider talking about it anywhere. One case, great, the guy's doing great, but we don't even talk about it. We don't offer it as an option. We don't talk about it. So we don't even think about it. So I stood up and I said, "Excuse me," and I didn't say who I was or why I'm, what the connection is. I just said, "But if it worked, and the guy in New York is doing really well, why really you wouldn't bring it up?" No, there's not enough data to support it. It's not enough cases to back it up. One case is not going to prove anything to anybody. We think it's too risky medically. It's too risky legally. We can't make any promises with it, so we don't talk about it. I kept on going to the guy. We had a big back and forth about it, and he wouldn't back down. So I finally had to stop him privately after his talk was over. And I pulled him aside, and I said, "Doctor, look, I'm sorry to keep bugging you about this." He goes, "No, Frank, it's okay. You can tell you anything you want." He says that the article that we're talking about from New York like I said, it's very, very famous. It's very well done. The guy in the article looks like he's doing really well. I have the article in my briefcase. And actually, I'm thinking about it now. I should have said, "Take it out. Let me see it." But I didn't say that. I should have said that. I didn't say it because my picture's on it in the article. I have a copy of it, and my picture's in the article. I should have said that, but I didn't say it. But I just said, "Doc, look, I'm the guy in the article. I'm the patient in that article." He froze, visibly jaw hanging down, and went, "What?" I said, "Yeah, hi, how you doing?" Put my hand out. I'm like, "Nice to meet you." "Oh my God, it's so nice to meet you. I can see this in person now. I can't believe this. This is so great." I'm like, "Okay, great. You're happy seeing me in person. What can you do about it?" "Well, I'm not the decision maker in my hospital, but I will definitely tell them that I saw you, and maybe hopefully they'll take it and do something with it." He was blowing me off, basically.
Even after seeing
yeah, but again, he's not. He's just he's a doctor at this hospital. He's an employee. Nothing he can say is going to change their minds, basically. Mm-hmm. And if my own doctor can't change any minds, and he's the one who wrote it, and he's the one to do the surgery, he's having problems getting it known. What's this guy going to do?
Wow.
So,
So, all right. Well, let me ask you this then. Yeah. Was there more to finish about that story?
Well, I was going to fast forward a couple of years, and something else we found out.
Please do tell.
Okay. I believe it was 2008. I had, at that point, I was vice president of the website for a couple of years. And so anytime a family registered to become part of the website community, I would always get notifications, emails, like who's coming in, why they're coming in. So one of the people on the board wrote to me and he said, "Frank, look this over very carefully. There's a family in Dallas, Texas, who's writing in, wants to join in. And one of the questions is, what is the reason for wanting to join this community?" And they said, "Our 1-year-old had surgery in Dallas, Texas, a year ago for muscle transplant surgery. They took muscles from his legs, put them into his stomach. They said, 'Frank, this sounds like your surgery.'" So I looked at it, I read it, and I wrote to the family. I said, "Can you please let me know a little more about this? I've had similar surgery done back when I was 15 years old, many, many years ago. What can you tell me?" They told me more about it. They said, "Yes, this is the surgery." I said, "Can you tell me who this doctor is?" Gave me his name. His name is Dr. Jeffrey Fearon. He's in Dallas, Texas. He actually what he's been known for doing is, you remember the movie Mask with Cher?
Yeah. Yeah.
It was about a boy who had I don't want to say malformed, but he had a facial cranial issue. And his main thing was doing surgeries for that purpose. But I wrote to him and I said to him, I said, Doctor, my name is Frank Walker. I said, I had this surgery done many years ago by this doctor. He writes me back. He goes, "You're the one?" I went, "What do you mean by that?"
You're the one.
Yeah. He says, you're the one in that article? I'm like, yeah. He says, "I'm well aware of that article." He again said it's a very famous article. He says, "I've never actually read it in detail, but I know what it said and I know what he did." And I said, "I can do that." And again, now we're under the impression that for 20, 25 years, no one else had done this. He started doing it in 2000 because the family that wrote in, actually, I got that wrong. The family wrote in 2008, but they had it done in 2000.
Okay. So their child was already then
developed.
7 years old, or
right. But they did it to him as an infant, where my surgery was when I was 15. Mm-hmm. My doctor wasn't convinced that you can go any younger than 15 because they weren't sure how the muscles were going to grow. So at 15, you're basically done growing for the most part. It wasn't going to change much. Doctor in Texas says, no, we can do this at any age, and the muscle is going to grow.
Oh, that's a good point.
It's still your muscle. It's even if it's moved, if it's attached properly, it can still grow. So he's done it. And I mean, last I had heard, which was about 3 or 4 years ago, he has done about 25 of these, all 100% successful. He put an article out in 2012 because he had to wait a while to see how the children were developing. So he put an article out in 2012 about his variation of it. It's more or less the same thing, but with better techniques and technologies. But I told my doctor about it, that I talked to him. He's like, "Tell me who this is. I want to talk to him. So they spoke on the phone, apparently, and I wasn't part of the conversation, but they spoke on the phone and they compared notes. My doctor was thrilled that someone else was doing this. And my doctor at that point was getting up in age, so he was, he was happy to see that the next generation was looking into this.
That's exciting.
Yeah. So
at this point, how many do you know? How many? So that doctor did 25 of them back at that time. Do you have any idea how many people have received this surgery since the first time that you were? Well, the 25 that I know he did was as of, I believe, about 2017. So I don't know the number since then, but I'm going to guess between 25 and 30, including mine. I'm thinking total
that I'm aware of. Again, I don't know 100%. We only know what information we're given.
Because and this is a question I don't know if you can answer, but because you had a prognosis to not survive beyond your first year of life,
right?
If that was in part, if not in total, because of this condition and of the potential or inability to survive without that protection, what reason would anybody have not to perform the surgery on any child that was born with prune belly that didn't have, possibly other underlying medical conditions?
Well, that's a good question. I don't have a definite answer to that. I mean, my doctor and this other doctor both figure that basically anybody can have this that has prune belly. But I mean, every person's case is different. It stems from the same things with the missing muscles, but then the other related issues can vary from person to person. Mm-hmm. So there's no one way to pinpoint this, which is one of the reasons why a lot of doctors have a hard time with this, because there's not one answer to people having prune belly syndrome, what to do with it, how to treat it.
What types of, I know that I want to talk a little bit about the work that you're doing and the website. So what types of other underlying conditions, or is it just run the gamut that people who are born with prune belly syndrome have? What can our listeners do to educate themselves or know more, and any information that you can share with us?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically a gamut kind of situation where every person's case is so different that it's hard to describe. Aside from saying that it stems from missing your muscles and then going from there. But the website is called the Prune Belly Syndrome Network. The web address is prunebelly.org, and they provide as much information as they have on there. There's access to other doctors that you can contact. There's access to different procedures. There's a community section where people just share their stories and are asking for help from wherever they are. And I've been working for the last almost 20 years trying to help them become known.
Do you advocate for other people who might be potential recipients of, I don't know if recipient is the right word, but for this candidates for this surgery?
They will, basically, I'll get emails every now and then. Not so much lately these days, but sometimes I still do, from a family. And basically the question that they're basically asking is, how did you get so old? Because,
that's not nice.
Well, I mean, they don't say it that way, but I know. Yes. But they're saying it because their son or daughter is 1 year old or something like that, and they're being told they're not going to survive. A lot of our families get told right off the bat, they're not going to make it. And tons of them, year after year, prove them wrong and survive to no real explanation as to why. But we always tell the parents, you are the advocate for the child. Don't let anyone sway your thinking. No one's going to know better than you what to do with your child. So, prune belly is not a death sentence.
Right. And
that's what we're trying to prove.
Yeah, you are 54 years old. So yeah. 53 years after a doctor told you, or a group of doctors told you, that you wouldn't survive past a year, right. Here you are sitting here talking to me, telling and to other families, letting them know in the case that someone does hear this or knows somebody who knows someone else who has this condition. Because if it's 1 in 40,000,
right?
That's not a super small number. I mean, 1 in a million is a small number, and even
right, exactly.
1 is too many. But 1 in 40,000 is.
And then the main reason I do what I can to help advocate for awareness is when I first found the website, the gentleman who started it, he's unfortunately no longer with us, but I wrote to him at the time, and I said to him, I gave him my story, explained who I was. He was thrilled to hear from me, because at that point, it was like maybe 10 people in the community, where now it's worldwide and there's so many hundreds of families in it. I said to him, why isn't this known like, say, something like Parkinson's disease? He says, Frank, I'm glad you used that example. I'll give you a 3-word answer to that. Michael J. Fox. When he came out and said, I have this, everybody wanted to know. That's what we need. So I'm like, all right, then I'll become famous and I'll get to work.
There you go.
So,
well, speaking of that, you have, was there anything else that you wanted to share with me and or the listeners about anything, really?
I'm trying to think what we haven't covered yet. I mean, I ever since that moment of the Michael J. Fox thing, that's when I said, okay, that's when we have to do whatever we can to get the word out about this. We've had news articles written. I've had some written about me. Other families have had some written about them. TV news, once in a while, will cover a story about something to do with prune belly, but it's not very common that they do. But if you go on YouTube and look up prune belly, you will find some TV news around the country that will do something once in a while.
Have you ever tried to get a celebrity to come visit a prune belly patient?
Not to visit patients, no.
Sports person?
Not for that, no. I've hosted a lot of musical benefits over the last 20 years locally on Long Island, where we have a lot of my musical friends, my mutual friends in music, will help me perform for a show. And in between performances, we'll talk about Prune Belly, we'll hand out pamphlets, we'll do things like that. And I've had written to celebrities along the way asking for an autograph to raffle off as a prize for the convention, for the fundraiser. Not many want to know or get into the reason behind it. They just say it's a charity function. Okay, I'll send them a raffle prize. We really have yet to find someone who's interested in the cause itself. Mm-hmm. There is actually an actor that we're aware of. He originated from Australia, but he's actually becoming known around here now too. His name is Patrick Bramall, Bramall, I think he is. Mm-hmm. And I forgot what show he's on, but he was on a show recently that was, I don't know if it ever actually carried on or not, but he's like an action hero kind of a guy. But from what I understand, he doesn't really want to talk about Prune Belly too much. I think someone
because he had the condition.
He was born with it. Yes, he was born with it, and I don't know how extreme he had it. I don't know his actual details, but I understand from someone talking to his family that he doesn't really discuss it much. I guess maybe he thinks it would be. I don't know if it would deter his career or whatever it is, but I would think that it would enhance it.
Yeah, he doesn't. He doesn't want to be the poster child.
Right.
I wonder though, right? It only takes one real celebrity whose child is born with something rare, or because it's not something it's diagnosed in adulthood, like in Michael J. Fox's case.
Right.
He was able to advocate for himself because he was an adult. It will take a celebrity or somebody influential's child to be born with it to bring awareness, or global awareness to it.
The one thing I did try to do years ago, I wrote to Muscular Dystrophy Association, which at the time, which Jerry Lewis's big cause every Labor Day. Mm-hmm. It was at the telethons every year, and so looking up their information, they were dealing with muscular conditions. I said, well, Prune Belly is a muscular condition. What would it take to add Prune Belly as one of the conditions that you cover, so that whatever money you guys raise on your telethons, some money would go to research for that. So I wrote to someone involved in the association. They wrote back, and they basically said, "What it looks like, we understand how serious your situation is, but with your condition, you're born without the muscles. You have no muscles to start at the start. Our cause is that the people's muscles deteriorate in time. They have the muscles, but then they lose them along the way. It's the opposite of what your condition is. So I'm sorry, we can't help you."
Sounds like a technicality.
That's what I thought.
Exceptions can be made.
Right. That's what I said. I said, you cover something like 60 different conditions within yourself. Mm-hmm. You can't add this as one more, even if it's a slight variation. No, we're sorry, we can't help you. So I always, again, and that's one of the reasons why if I ever become famous, I'm going to turn them around and say, how about now?
Right.
This is what we've done now. What about now? And, but.
Well, Frank, people suck, but anyway, they do and they don't. There's people like you. So tell me a little bit. Tell me about your song, and we're definitely gonna play our awesome song at the end of our episode today.
Thank you.
Tell me about your song and who's a part of it and what it's about and what it's for.
Yes, in the frame of mind of if I can't become famous myself, I'm going to write a song and try to have the song become famous. So I wrote a song about Prune Belly syndrome back in 2003, actually, called "Not the Only One," because that's another thing that people deal with when they have this condition. They think that no one else has this. They feel alone when they have this condition, from wherever they are. Because it's that right. I can remember when I was a kid having an encyclopedia in my house. Prune Belly syndrome was a 5-line blurb in an encyclopedia. Explain what it was, and they said only 150 people in the world with this. And I went, what? And I'm like 13 at this point, looking it up. I'm like, 150 people in the world. It's that rare? They were wrong. But, so I felt alone. And I didn't meet anyone else with Prune belly syndrome until I was 35. And the person I met was a 2-year-old who is now just got married recently and all that kind of stuff. Cool. But I wrote a song in 2003. I recorded it back then with my partner, Ramona, and a friend of ours, Jen Chapin, who is the daughter of singer Harry Chapin. She helped us perform this. And then I re-recorded it just a year and a half ago because I have an album that I put out and I put it on there. And this time around, I included a lot of people from the Prune belly community. And also included a bunch of music friends from a local scene here. They did the singing, and then my Prune belly friends did some talking in the middle of the song. And basically rattling off general information about what Prune belly is and how you can help. And but the fact that but I wanted it to come from people who actually live it and know what they're talking about. So the majority of people who talk in the middle of the song are Prune belly survivors. I also have my fiance Tammy speaking in there too, because she's been a very big help the past few years, who would help me with things like this. And actually the song ends with one of those Prune belly brothers who actually didn't survive. He was 19, passed away early last year. But I had found a recording of him on YouTube talking about Prune belly. So I incorporated a little bit of what he said to close the song out. So, nice. And I made a video to accompany the song. And when you're hearing different parts of the song, you're also seeing a picture of the person who's talking or singing. And so at the end of the video, I put rest in peace, Justin. And just to show that, there are survivors, but there are also ones who don't make it. And I know a lot of families of people who didn't make it. And that bugs me because here I am, 54 years old, and this family lost their child at a young age. Some of them were older, most of them were younger. And that gets me, that bothers me. Because why did I get here? Why did I get this far and they couldn't? So that's another reason why I wrote the song. The song tries to help raise awareness for that.
Well, like I said, we're going to play that, and and we'll also include links. Is the song available to purchase?
Yes, absolutely. It's part of my album, which I put out last year, and it's on my website, which is Frank Walker Music, LINY.com. The proceeds of that song go to prunebelly.org. So it's all connected that way.
Great. What's the name of your album?
It's just my name. Actually, it's self-titled because I couldn't come up with the name.
Just Frank Walker. Okay.
it's Frank Walker. Yeah.
That's okay. So everybody needs a namesake album, right?
And it's funny because I've had songs that I've written over the years that I just never did anything with. So the majority of the songs that are on the album are older songs, which just no one else knows that. I know that because I had them around. To everybody else, they're new songs.
Sure.
But I have at least 20 to 30 songs like that. And I was thinking about putting them all out at once. And people are like, nah, you might just want to go a little at a time. It's going to be a little costly to do that. And probably a little bit of overload. So
yeah, so your album can be purchased through your website?
Through my website and through Amazon, iTunes, things like that. I believe the links to all of those are on the website. And
proceeds of the song go to prunebelly.org.
Absolutely. Yes,
Very good. All right. Well, Frank, first of all, I want to thank your mom for having you, because you are a person that is just generous in spirit and generous in your daily life. And it's a pleasure to know you. And I'm so glad that we were able to not only reconnect, but also reconnect and that you're able to be sitting here telling me this story at
Thank
54
you.
years old. You are a truly, I always thought you were a miracle anyway, but you are truly a miracle.
Thank you. I'm just trying to do my best, and I really appreciate you giving me this opportunity to say those things, and again to reconnect with you anyway.
It's my pleasure, and I'm looking forward to getting back to live gigs.
Yes.
I know that COVID has kept you indoors, like it has kept many people indoors, and
Yeah.
you are at risk. So you're staying at home, but you were doing some live Facebook lives and things like that, and hopefully get back to that. But really, that in-person stuff. Can't wait to see you play again.
Yeah. I'm hoping in 2022 I'm able to get back again. I am immunocompromised. So my doctors are suggesting I just lay low through this, let it ride out, because any slip ups basically could be very costly to me. So
yeah, we
I have to
that.
I have to take it easy and just listen to what they say and stay home. So
that's the miracles of Zoom. The miracle of Zoom as well, right?
Absolutely. Thank God for this.
Frank, thanks so much. I really appreciate your time, and thank you for sharing so openly with me.
And again, thank you for letting me do it. I really appreciate it.